Genuine weapons in TC2 are an interesting concept that aren't really set to their full potential. Now don't get me wrong, it's neat to have a completely different side grade to pick from than the original, but it's honestly quite saddening to see that Torches Digital only made these models to be a pretty thing to look at in your hands behind a screen. Most of these genuines are unfortunately unobtainable as of making this video, but what the heck. Not Sky isn't making a part 2 that I know of, so I'll do it myself. I picked out a handful of reskins that I thought would make neat weapons. And before we start, I want to put a disclaimer out there that some of these weapons might be a bit unbalanced, and just so you know, I try to make these stats as fair as possible. Okay, let's go. Let's start out with Flanker. In my opinion, I think that the mock coach is sick as hell. The model and the color scheme are phenomenal, but enough about the looks. If you didn't already know, the word Mach is a unit of measurement which describes the velocity of an object. So basically, Mach equals speed. And yes, I already know that speed is Flanker's whole gig, but I wanted this to someone to be like the Flawed. My version of the Mach coach adds a Mach boost meter. Said meter would feel like a banner, only damage dealt from the Mach coach. Once the meter is full, I'd imagine you have to taunt to use it, and on use, you'd get a 25% jump and speed boost while it's active. But aside from that, I'd imagine you'd have a 25% damage bonus. And like the Lupra, it'd have a 50% faster firing rate with a 66% less clip. Whenever you use the boost, you'd be locked onto only using the Mach coach. And if you don't get a kill while the boost is active, you'd be slowed down by 50% at the end. Kinda like the Tenensis Turkey. Next up for Flanker, the Hot Cocoa Blast. I feel like this idea came to me with a snap. Since it's hot, what if it could burn people on use? Along with a 5-second Mad Milk, it'd also apply a 5-second Afterburn. And just to make it a bit different from the Mad Milk, it has a 5% faster recharge time, and a 15% faster reload speed on your primary so that it can be a very good utility weapon, or tool. Just so that it won't be a direct upgrade from the Mad Milk, it would take away 5% of your reserve ammo on your primary. Oh, and if you aren't already on fire and you splash yourself with it, you'd start to burn. Numbnuts. Now onto Trooper, we have the Triad weapon, the Night Sky Igniter. Now, when I started to brainstorm changes for this, I kinda got stuck on what I'd change. The direct hit is already a great weapon on its own, being able to 2-shot every class and 3-tap brutes. It's a weapon with a very high skill ceiling, which didn't help me to figure out at all what I'd change, but I took a few steps back. The Night Sky Igniter is a firework launcher. Firework launcher. Fire. I made it so that it would be like the Lemonade. On hit, it'd apply an afterburn for 7 seconds. It'd also mini-crit anyone who would be burned. I gave it almost all the same ups and downs as the direct hit, with a 75% projectile speed and a minus 50% blast radius. Now, I didn't want this to be the direct hit, but just a bit different, so I made it so that it would do 15% more blast damage to yourself. Now, this would make it so that it wouldn't be as easy or as good to rocket jump with. But what the heck, rocket jumping is enough to give up with this launcher. Now, onto the Trooper reskin nobody uses. Now, the idea for this was much easier to come up with. The Big Bite is labeled as a parasite launcher, but there isn't really much of a parasite feature in TC2, so I decided to make it mark someone on death with a direct rocket. Originally, its stats were on direct rocket, marked for death, crits whenever it would mini-crit, and minus 25% less damage. Now, if you didn't already know, crits do 3 times your normal damage, so it would just take forever to kill every class. So I decided to just cut it short and make it so that it just doesn't do any mini-crit damage, having to rely on your secondary. So your shotgun, or maybe even the PDR if you're crazy. With that, we're on to Annihilator. And the Jacker Roger took me a bit, but I did come up with something. It would have the same stats as the Loose Cannon, but with an added 10% damage bonus, a 35% faster reloading speed, and a 25% wider blast radius. And on kill, you'd gain 25% of your clip back, kind of like the Aerial Bomber. And with a 50% small clip size, you'd be starting out with 2 pumpkins and have 6 shots with 4 kills. I think the idea of making it someone like the Aerial Bomber is a good idea, and it's pretty unique in my opinion. With the Whirlpool Wrath, the one main thing I wanted to change about it is the fact that it's a reskin for the Elegant Blade. When I first saw this being in use, I thought it was just a reskin for the Broken Sword, since the backpack icon made it look smaller. So I decided to change it to where you'd gain 10% of your charge back on kill and a 10-second speed boost, making you 35% faster. It also give you a flat 10 extra health so that you could have some more survivability, but just so that Demo Knights wouldn't have to only rely on this thing, I gave it a 25% damage penalty, so that it could be a finisher if you run out of your ammo on your grenade launcher. The Groovy Grinder, unlike the Monitor of Duty, is a stock reskin, meaning it's just stock, but you can paint it. So, how can we change it? By making Brute have the ability to whip out a chainsaw, of course! When pressing Alt Fire, you'd be able to change to an alternate melee weapon. It'd be like a different WM1 for Brute. Oh, and just so that you're not the slowest class in the game, running around trying to rip people to shreds, you get a 45% speed bonus just so you can rip people to shreds faster. But if you want to be a regular, dumb, stand in one place for the whole game class, then you can. And you can be exactly like the people I just mentioned with a 25% faster rev-up time. But for all the people I just mentioned, it would have a base reserve ammo of 150. That's right, it has a 25% less clip, just so that you don't have to only rely on your minigun. Now with the squid coil, this is also an easy one to come up with. I mean, for Gabe Newell's sake, it's a squid on your hand. So I decided to give it an ink meter. Said ink meter would fill with damage done from it, your minigun, and your shotgun. On use, it would cover your enemies in ink, or your enemy's screen in ink so that they can't see, being very similar to the cold shoulder. To help you fill up said meter, you'd have a 15% faster swing rate and a damage bonus in water. But not by much, it's only 10%. You'd have 25% reduced on your ammo on your primary and secondary. Well, that is if your secondary was a shotgun. Oh, and if you miss your ink, you blind yourself. Imbecile. The Raven is an amazing reskin. It kind of looks like the Luger morph, and I love any stock reskin, so how can I make it different? By practically giving Mechanic the Winger, of course. And yes, I know I could have just put comparable to Winger, but that's just boring. So let's read out the stats. The Raven now has a 15% damage bonus, along with a 35% greater jump height while secondary or your melee is active. Meaning you can just have the Raven out or your wrench, and you can just jump up to places where normal mechanics wouldn't be able to get without using the Wrangler. But just so I could differentiate the Raven from the Winger just a bit, I decided to give it a 7% faster movement speed, making it akin to the likes of the Gunslinger or the Heavy Metal. You'd, of course, have to have a 25% smaller clip size, but I think that's enough to give up for this amazing utility weapon. The Eyes of Bermuda took me 2 tries to get this one right, mainly because I thought of originally going with the Bermuda concept, but instead I thought, what if mechanic reskins were just weapons from another class? Since I already did this with the Raven, I decided to take one from Brute, aka the sub-shotgun. On kill, it dropped a small health pack and 2 ammo packs. This would make it like the sub-shotgun in the sense of a don't-need-no medic weapon, but you'd also get an extra ammo pack for free on kill without any dispenser around. Along with the on-kill stat, it has a 20% faster firing rate, and like the sub-shotgun, a 34% smaller clip size. And might I add, this weapon was practically made for aggressive or battle mechanics. So all you battle mechanics out there, go wild. With Doctor, we have the Malpractitioner, and it's just an amazing reskin, like most of the other reskins on this list. Starting to see a pattern? So what could I change about the Malpractitioner? By making it a Vaccinator and Amputator combo, of course. So instead of having a choice between what damage resistance you have, you just have a damage resistance against everything except melee damage. It also has a 15% faster charge rate so that it has a similar speed to the Kritzkrieg, yet a bit slower. Oh, but how could I forget? Just this regular supercharge is a bit broken, so instead of lasting a normal 8 seconds, it lasts 5 seconds instead. And the Dentist Delight only gives half a second of charge instead of a full second. And last, yet certainly not least, Marksman. Look, I'm not a big fan of the Huntsman, mainly because I just suck with it. That's a skill issue on my part. But nonetheless, for this it was an easy one. Spiders bite, so a bleed would make sense on this one. On body shot, your target would bleed for 5 seconds. I also give it a 10% faster charge with your bow, so that you can just launch a barrage of arrows on your enemies. Oh, and mini crit on headshot, cause fuck you. But really, this stat was made to inspire marksmen to try and go for body shots more often. But if you're just a marksman who's cracked at getting headshots, don't worry. You can still one-tap almost every class in the game with this. Yes, the last weapon for this video, the Citric Reaction. Now, I want it so that you could gain a way to get rid of large groups or just single targets easily. So you get a juice meter, which of course fills up with damage done. Once full, you'd be able to pull out a grenade from the bottom of the gun and throw out a lemonade bottle that would quote-unquote blind people. But since there really is no blind feature, technically there is with the cold shoulder, but I decided that it would just do bleed damage for 8 seconds. Just to put it in there, lemonade would just be a bit busted. And just so you can't abuse the new Citric Reaction, it has a 50% slower fire rate along with a 10% less damage penalty. Or a 10% damage penalty. Hey everyone, I just wanted to thank you all for a very late 150 subscribers. It's a small yet very meaningful goal. It's halfway to 300, so that means I get to make a marksman compilation soon. Watch out, Nos Guy. But in all seriousness, thank you. If you like the changes I made in this video, then give them a like, or give the video a like, I mean. But if you don't like the stats I made, leave a comment down below, telling me how I can, like, change them. I'll read it, I promise. Alright, that's enough out of me. I'll see you all in Meet the Zapper.